Hello, this is Inside the Press Box with Sunil Sunder Raj for the Everyday Fan Sports. Tonight, I'm happy to be speaking with Mike Zacchio, a former sports writer and columnist for the Journal News, LowHug.com, and USA Today Network in White Plains, New York, and now a New York State certified social studies teacher. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to speak with me. I really appreciate it. It's so great to be back in touch, and again, congrats on your success.
Thank you, man. No, thank you for having me. It's like I said, great to see you. And it's been a wild couple of years since we last talked.
That's right. That's right. Hey, man, you had again a tremendous run. It said for the Journal News, LowHud.com, covering high school sports, New York Yankees, Westchester Knicks in the NBA G League, the Rockland Boulders in the Can-Am League. I mean, when you look back on this, Mike, just the incredible, amount of success. I'm just wondering what comes to your mind first and foremost.
I mean, it's crazy to think of when I now talk to people, it's like, yeah, I spent a decade at the Journal News, and I'm like, I'm 34 now. I'm like, I spent a third of my life writing for a newspaper. That's one part. I think probably the biggest thing that comes to my mind is I still remember, I tell my students this, I tell when I've guest lectured, I remember being 6-7 years old, practicing my sign off from Yankee Stadium. And that's what I wanted to do. And for me to so many people don't ever get to even come close to living their childhood dream, and to sit there and say I got paid to cover the New York Yankees. I got paid to walk in the clubhouse. I got paid to interview Alex Rodriguez and cover the team. It doesn't feel real in a lot of ways. But I also just try to tell myself I'm very, very lucky. I'm not a very religious man, I guess spiritual at best, but I am blessed to have had the success and to have been afforded the opportunities that I've received.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic to hear, Mike. And then also, I said covering high school sports, beat reporter, volleyball, girls soccer, basketball, and softball. Women's sports is a big initiative of yours. It said, and all power to you. I mean, you said we talked about it before I came on the air. I have a daughter who's a sophomore in high school. I mean, that just again, kudos to you. And one of your biggest honors, recipient of the National Award for Exceptional Online Coverage by the American Coaches Association in 2016. Just talk about again how impactful that was for you, Mike.
So it's funny because my first beat ever at LowHud was volleyball, and it was girls volleyball because we didn't cover boys volleyball at the time. And I remember telling my editor, I'm like, I don't know the first thing about volleyball. I know there's an ace somewhere there, and they spike the ball. That's about it. And they were like, well, I guess you'll learn. I'm like, can I get soccer? I played soccer. They're like, no, you need to work your way up to I just had no, self-awareness of that. But I've always just been someone where whatever opportunity it is, I'm going to just dive in and really try to make the most of it. And I wound up spending all my entire career covering volleyball, transitioned into getting boys volleyball, but then they threw me softball and then girls basketball. And then I just kind of somehow became the unofficial, girls sports, women's sports, writer. And yeah, I really took that as, a really important responsibility because one, I'm the most competitive person that many will meet. So whenever we would have our annual or whatever monthly meetings, I'm trying to compete with football in a girls volleyball beat or girls soccer. And I didn't care that. I'm I know people are going to read football more. I want to push myself and I want to give these individuals the coverage and the respect that they deserve. And to show hey, there is interest in women's sports. You just need to provide it. You need to have someone who cares and an outlet who's willing to promote it. And, I think good things will come of that. And now we're starting to see, the third overall pick in the WNBA draft is from our coverage area. So I covered her, we talk every, through social media, we follow each other and whatnot. And now in the years to come, we're projected to have a local draft pick in the WNBA for the next 3-4 years. I'm imagine if nobody ever talked about these people. So it's great. It's crazy. It's been, like I said, it's been a wild ride to see how everything's changed over the last 10-12 years of my life.
Oh yeah. I mean, and the fact that digital is said print, and then again, the explosion of social media now, the fact that you can interact with these athletes, said on such a personal basis. I mean, it's just remarkable, Mike. Can you speak to that just in terms of the evolving, said of the business?
Yeah, when I got there, we were, what was like 9 or 10 part-timers, like 6 full-timers, 3 editors, and then like 1 full-time editor or something like that, or 1 head editor, and then that's just evolved, whittled down. Like we needed to use our digital assets to stay alive, really. But yeah, back in the day when we weren't using as much social media or anything like that, if we needed, especially at the high school level, like if we needed to get a quote from someone, or if we needed to know something, we had no way of getting in contact with them. We would have had to call the coach and be like, hey, I know this is going to sound weird with this 27-year-old male calling for, your 16-year-old basketball player's number, but like, I need to get a quote from her about this award she won or whatever. Whereas nowadays, I mean, I guess you could still say it's weird if a 27-year-old is DMing a 16-year-old, but I always took it at a professional level. Like now, like I say, if you know their Instagram handle is or their Twitter handle is, whatever, like, hey, Maddie, like any thoughts on the game today or whatever? Or, hey, can you give me a quick call to discuss the game or something like that? And if they get back to you, they get back to you. I was always someone who really leaned into social media. Like I always thought it could be a vital asset to a sports reporter. So, like I said, like what we were discussing earlier, like I used video, photos, DMs, whatever, scouring the search bars, whatever, using every tool available to me to try to bring about the best coverage possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's, as I said to you, taking numerous photographs, which were great, but now the videos just, I mean, you see the amount of clicks you can get on a video and hits, that, and how popular they, can become, and the fact that within that, couple of seconds, because we all know everyone's attention span is very, limited these days. So you really need to, hit it right on the mark. And that's what obviously is the driving force. Hey, I had to ask you, because I have so many questions for you, but just in terms of memorable moments for you, just like, I know there are a bunch of them, but any, that stand out to you?
I mean, aside from covering the Yankees, which is always going to be like a number 1 for me. One of I mean, I guess it's like an infamous moment. My first year on the volleyball beat, I was doing like predictions because they were like, oh, it's a way that's something that we do. We make predictions every game. And I would, for whatever reason, just I would underestimate the Harrison Huskies. Just never really had faith in them. They're like, well, they won it last year, and they have a lot of kids back from last year, so why don't you think that they're the favorites? I'm like, I don't know. I think this Ursuline team is going to beat them. And then sure enough, wound up being Ursuline and Harrison in the section final, and Harrison wound up winning 3-2. They were down 2-0, but we don't talk about that. And after the game, I go to interview the coach, and I'm like, hey, Coach Light, I'm Mike Zacchio, because we didn't really go to many games. And then she was like, oh, you're Mike Zacchio. Girls, this is Mike Zacchio. So they were like, oh, here, can you hold this for us? Whatever. So they took a picture. They're like, I held the section trophy. And now it became like a ritual of if I picked against a team in a section final, or if I just doubted a team all year and they like won, then it was like tradition that like, hey, you're going to pose with us, and just kind of like we told you so kind of thing. And it, for me, I remember because it was a humbling experience. It's like because for some reason, again, going from I know nothing about volleyball to thinking I'm like, oh, Ursuline's going to win. Harrison, they're not winning. And thinking like I'm this know-it-all, then to get humbled like that, it's like, maybe you should spend some more time researching these teams and seeing these teams and talking to these teams before you're making really strong predictions. Or statements. And it's something that I tried carrying through with me, so that if I did make a strong statement, I always backed it up with like, hey, I'm saying this team is going to win, or I'm saying I don't believe in this team, and here's a list of reasons why I think they're going to win or why they're not. And then if they win or if they don't or whatever, it's like, okay, I wasn't just shooting my mouth off. Like I backed it up with some evidence. And if they won, it's like, hey, I told you so. And if I'm wrong, then I always told teams, like, if I'm right, whatever, I'm right. And if I'm wrong, prove me wrong. I'm happy to admit that I'm wrong, but I just always try to say, like, just keep it respectful. Don't curse at me, whatever. I'm never going to bash any teams with any foul language or whatever. But just kind of being humble and like, remembering not to get too full of yourself, I guess.
Yeah, no, again, that's an excellent point you make. And I think the fact is, and I can relate to is that being behind the scenes, like not being out in the forefront. I think that was the one thing is that putting a picture, or face, to the articles as well, because I think that's one thing a lot of teams, a lot of viewers don't get to see. And I remember like 2018, and when the Sussex County Miners won their first Can-Am League championship, I had one of the team photographers take a photo, and then all of a sudden people knew who I was. Like, they could actually, say, hey, that's the guy who covers, minor league baseball. I mean, if I think that guy doesn't take the picture, who knows when, and then of course I started taking, those selfies, at the games. And then I think that's what caught the buzz. But hey, I want to ask you that first assignment you had, when if that is like, rings a crystal, bell for you as well, Mike.
Well, it was just the first assignment that like I ever had at Lowhud.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what the first, I think the first sports assignment was like covering like an ice skating practice at like the local
Okay.
rink or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And my first ever assignment with them was a college graduation that's actually right around the corner from where I work now.
Mhm.
And I just remember being like so overwhelmed, and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I don't know who to talk to. It's like they're
Yeah.
graduates, so I'm like, I guess I just grab anyone. And it's just it's so interesting to see, like, to remember that feeling of like, I just feel so overwhelmed. This whole space feels so big, and I
Yeah.
don't know what the heck I'm doing, to where I got to the point where 10 years later, when I was leaving Lowod, where I'm like, I
Mhm.
can walk into any high school and I know, where I'm sitting. I know where to go. I probably know the athletic director.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes easy in that regard. Like, you just,
Yeah.
like, you believe in yourself. You're like, I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm reporting a game. It doesn't matter if it's a section final or just first game of the year, middle of the season, or whatever. And just, the repetition. So I do remember that, like, oh my God, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? What
Yeah.
am I doing here? And then I remember the, like, yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like it's like teaching, like walking into the classroom the first time. I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
I was a bad student, much less how am I going to make as a teacher? Whereas like
Yeah.
now you can walk into a classroom and you're like, as long as you know the material and you've practiced and you've worked on your craft, you should be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I think, just having the methodology and just having that work ethic as well. I mean, I think that's so essential if, to have that blueprint in place, excuse me. Once you have that and you can follow that every time out, it just makes, just simplifies everything and makes it so much easier, and it comes naturally. I think that's, again, that's terrific.
I was
I
literally typing
Yeah, go
up
ahead.
just to that point, I was
Yeah,
literally typing
yeah,
up a cover letter right before we got on this call for a job that I'm
yeah.
applying to. Because
Hmm.
my student teaching cooperating teacher, like my mentor teacher, I guess, told me,
Yeah.
like, when you apply to a job, apply to the job, but then write a
Hmm.
personal letter to the coordinator or the chairperson of the department, because they're going to get
Hmm.
200 resumes that
Yeah.
you probably won't be one of them, that they'll sift through. But if you send a letter, like, you at least become a little bit more memorable. Like, oh, hey, this guy Sunil, like, send me a letter. Like, let's find his resume. What's going on?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in there, I wrote, I'm like, listen, I can't speak to the qualifications of the other candidates, but what I can assure you is that nobody, or very few, will probably work harder or will want it more. Because I said, I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm not 24, like most first year teaching candidates. I'm looking for a job, whatever. Like, I'm 34. Like,
Yeah.
I, I need a full-time job. Like, we want to start a family. So I
Hmm.
don't have the luxury of like, oh, I'll sub for a few years and I'll bide my time until a full-time job
Yeah.
comes along. Like, I don't want to be 39 having my first kid. Not, no disrespect to anyone who has kids a little bit later in life, but that's not
Yeah.
what I want. So there's a hunger about me, and I would love to just get in the room to be like, you can talk to anyone I've worked with, and they will, if nothing else, they'll say like, he works his ass off. Like, he
Yeah.
will work hard to improve at who he is. I won't say I'm gonna be the best teacher year one. I don't think any first year teacher is, but like,
Hmm.
give me, a couple of years in or whatever, I think you'll see a difference. And I think you'll be happy that you went and hired me. So hopefully,
Yeah.
knock on wood, things turn out. But there's just
Yeah.
that point of like, I can't speak to the qualifications of anyone else, but I will work harder and I want this more. So I'm actually going to send that letter out tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Yeah. Wishing you all the best, Mike. Hey, before we come in there, we're talking about the Rockland Boulders. It said, dating back to 2014 and before that, before they won their first Can-Am
Mm-hmm.
League championship, it said, working with of course, manager Jamie Keefe, a lot of, again, incredible moments, just, again, topped off by that championship. When you started that out and just, to see where that team ended up and the success that they had under Jamie when he was there for 6-7 years. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I always appreciate, I mean, I think we were talking about this right before. Like I've always appreciated Jamie because he was a baseball guy. Like he got it. Like, so he understood that we were there to do a job, just as we understood he was there to do a job. And he was just someone who, to me, even though I always tried to be very unbiased, like I'm not, going to be in the press box and like, woo, 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 woo. But like Jamie was someone that you wanted to root for. You wanted success for him because he treated the reporters right. The players loved playing for him. Like the staff he seemed to get along with. So, to me, I wasn't shocked to see how the team progressed. And I think I saw whatever was the first 2 years I was there that I'm like, I think this team, I don't know when it'll be, but if this guy, Jamie Keefe, stays here, I could see them winning a championship because they have the talent. I think he's a very good manager. I think he, really cares. I could see him fighting for the team. And if he does, like, I'm happy for him. There's some players, coaches that I feel like you can watch in pro sports or whatever. You're like, they won. Like, really? I mean, okay, whatever. But like Jamie for me was always someone that was great to root for. And even the guys on the team, I still remember Marcus Nidifer, like taking me, like I was like looking for someone, and I think it was my first or second year there, and I'm still like, I don't know, like I still look at these guys like, oh, you guys could be in the majors like tomorrow. And I'm like, he's like, who are you looking for? You looking for Matt? Whatever. He's like, yeah. He's like, come here, follow me. And he just like, here you go, man. Hey, Matt, he's got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
And like, just again, Nidifer got it. So like guys like that just were really, really easy to root for.
Yeah, they were very personal. I mean, very approachable. You could go up to them, strike up a conversation. I mean, that's just not possible, again, on the major league level, but on this level with independent baseball, again, just having, striking up those relationships and being able to talk to, the players, and, again, the manager and, the Jamie was the best. I mean, just in terms of post-game interviews, I mean, I felt the same way too. I was intimidated that first month. I don't think I went down to the clubhouse, but then finally, I said, someone said, you got to start going down there and talking to him. And I think right after that, it just, again, it became so much easier. And then, it felt like, you were just having a normal conversation. It wasn't like, I was the journalist, he was the manager, and it just, that was made it, I think even more special.
And there was also, I think, an understanding between the two of us that, like you said, I obviously, I mean, I don't know if you remember, like I would always put the recorder on or whatever, it's on the desk. But like, I feel like there was always that understanding where if the conversation started getting a little bit more in depth, whatever, there was that understanding of like, hey, Jamie, I'm not using this. And like, you could feel comfortable. Like, I'm just asking for my own knowledge. I'm not printing this because there was the understanding that like, if you screw me on this and use this in the paper, I'm never talking to you again.
I know. Yeah.
And so, you get the story, like the one story, but now the other games that you need to cover here, like, no, you get nothing out of me. And even if you send someone else and they take you off the beat, why should I trust anyone else? So, I think just, like I said, cultivating that relationship and that rapport, which is something that as a reporter, I put a lot of emphasis on, like showing up to games, showing your face and building that relationship so that coaches, it wasn't like a, hey coach, I'm Mike with the Journal News. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. Like, hey Joe, like, I need you for 2 minutes, or like, hey, I need Sabrina for literally 30 seconds and then I'm out. Like, and it makes your life a lot easier.
It's true. Being trustworthy, being reliable. I mean, all those traits. I mean, again, so important. And I think, that's why, now coming back year after year and again, has made it so worthwhile. What was the atmosphere, Mike? Just sitting in that press box. I mean, you saw the crowds kept on building and building, and especially I remember in 2014 how packed, it said at the end, it was Provident Bank Park. I mean, just talk about that, how exhilarating that was.
I remember one of my editors was talking about one of my colleagues, and he's like, he will cover the Haverstraw Little League Tournament of Champions the same exact way he will cover the New York Yankees. And and that's what you need to kind of have. And so whenever I went to the Boulders games, like I covered it, like I was covering the New York Yankees. Like, so I personally, I loved it. One, because it was 8 minutes from my house at the time. Two, I love baseball. It's my favorite sport. but also like the staff is very friendly. They
Yeah.
have the game notes in the packets. So like to
Yeah.
me, I'm used to high school sports where like you get nothing. Like you have
Mhm.
any and all stats and figures that you have, you're spending the hours researching all of that to be able to use it. Whereas they're giving you a packet at the beginning of the series and like,
Yeah.
hey, here you go. You know, Sunil is hitting 500 over his last 6 games, whatever. Like, okay, that's something to keep an eye on. Or hey,
Yeah.
you know, Matt is struggling. He's batting 167 over his last 10 games. Matt goes 4 for 4, 3 for 4. Hey, Matt, like, you know, you've been struggling lately. You know, what changed today? Do you feel like, you know, a switch has flipped or something like that? And you know, maybe he appreciates the fact that like, hey, I've been hitting like crap lately. And now, you know, maybe I'm turning it around and getting a little bit of love. But I think just approaching, I never looked at it as, oh, this is independent Can-Man League baseball. Like I'm going to cover a professional baseball game. I'm going to act like a professional, like I'm not going to act like a goon in the press box. I'm going to, you know, act like I've been there before and I'm there to do a job. At the end of the day, I'm representing the Journal News. And that like I have a job to do and I take pride in my work. And, you know, that's just kind of how I approached everything. And that's how I try to approach any job or any game that I was covering.
Yeah, that's what I was intrigued by, is that using that information, as you know, those tidbits, those nuggets, and turning that, you know, use in your article, because you were on deadline as well. So it's like, you know, you had, I mean, the pressure was on, you know, there to, you know, knock that article out. So for you, I'm sure that was so vital, Mike.
Yeah, like I said, you can always just write a bunch of things down. Like even if you just were copying from the notes section, like, oh, Junior Arroyo is, you know, batting 500 or whatever. Like if Junior goes, you know, 2 for 4, but like they're 2 throwaway singles and they don't really matter to the game, it's still a line you could throw in there. Like if you need to fill space for that first deadline, because we had multiple deadlines, like if like they need a story in like as soon as the game's over, you need to have that chunk filled. And then you can always like go back and like erase it. Oh, I got some really good quotes from Jamie or from Junior or whomever. But yeah, being prepared and like writing throughout the game and just, you know, again, and having more of those notes just made life a lot easier because you can see possible storylines that might unfold. And if you start to see something unfolding, you can kind of get to work on that right away. And there's been plenty of times when you also have to abandon it because there's a walk-off homer. And now that's the only thing that really matters.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with you. Hey, I wanted to ask you that about this, that you talk about the Haverstraw Little League, that you were a baseball announcer. And again, it's so commendable, volunteer announcing, you know, multiple state championship, tournament champions, regular season, all-star games. I mean, be able to work with kids, you know, I mean, again, how rewarding was that for you, Mike?
I loved baseball and it's my hometown little league. It started because I'm a year older than my brother. So we age out at 12. So when I graduated, when I aged out and he was 12, I'm like, hey, I'm at these games anyway. Like, can I announce? Because you guys don't have an announcer. I feel like it just adds a little something to the game. And then it was like, yeah, you want to do the tournament of champions? And again, I know what it was like to hear, because again, when you're 11, 12 years old, like hearing your name over a speaker, you feel like a professional. You're on that field. And I just, again, I approached the tournament champions. Like I brought my little notebook, I brought pens and paper. Like I've been the same, you know, breed since I was 12 years old to where I'm now 34. But yeah, working with kids. And then some of those kids that I covered or whatever announced their games when they got to high school. It's like, hey, I remember interviewing you when you were 12 and now you're 18 or 17 and now you're a senior. So it's cool in that regard as well.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Hey, you were able to, before I ask about, you know, building your experience, you know, even in college, working on the school newspapers, Rockland Community College, I think SUNY purchased as well. That first time you saw your byline, like you saw your name there, I mean, just what was going through your mind? Like, you know, just how, I mean, again, or was this, I mean,
so
what were the emotions? What was going through your head?
Multiple things. Cause, I remember I have a picture of it. I don't want it to ever see the light of day because like my sideburns are like down to here. I have this stupid like buzz cut. I had an earring in my ear and I'm just posing with like, this is my first byline. And, the girl on the front page from a different, cause I covered like Dominican college and then they were talking about Rockland Community College's graduation. The girl on the front page of the picture was like the girl I had the biggest crush on. when I went to college with her. I'm just thinking like, oh my,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm thinking, wow, like what are the odds that she's on the on the front page? But also I'm like my name is there. Like that's
Yeah.
my name. Like I grew up
Yeah.
reading this newspaper and like there it is
Yeah.
by Mike Zacchio. And I'm just like
Yeah.
that feel and even 10 years later, like I always got that rush and like I always
Yeah.
loved print editions of
Yeah.
things. Like, yeah, seeing it online is nice, but like I would
Hard
always go to
copy.
our like I would go to our stash. Oh, I have hundreds somewhere in a
Yeah.
box that I'm like, I would always wait to like we got our shipment in or whatever and like go and grab
Mhm.
like, you know, the article or whatever and just be like, yeah, like this is still pretty cool. And again, it's just
Yeah.
never really taken that for granted because one day it's going to be over, whether they just do away with print or you leave journalism or whatever. One day it's going to end and you will not have a byline anymore. So I just tried to savor the experience while it was afforded to me.
Yeah, definitely soak that up. It's like Rockland Community College, SUNY Purchase College. It said Associates of Arts in Communication and Media Arts, and then working on the school newspaper as a sports reporter for the Outlook and RCC TV intern. 3.69 GPA, 2 jobs. You work. I mean, at SUNY Purchase, you're working 4 jobs, 3.72 GPA, working at the Brick. I mean, when did you
I'm a
ever get
hustler,
sleep,
man.
Mike?
I'm a hustler, man. Like even now, like my AP,
Yeah.
my assistant principal knows it. Like my
Yeah.
students know. They're like, Mrs. Zacchio, you DJ or whatever. And it's like, I tell people like I've never made a lot of money in my life, so like
Yeah.
I need to hustle. I need these other side
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah.
So yeah, RCC. I loved my experience. I recommend to everyone to go to a community college. Unless there's like, to me, unless there's a 4-year university that like if I know I want to go for journalism, like, and I know my parents can afford it or whatever, like you should be going to a top tier journalism school. But other than that, like nothing wrong with the community college. The school that I work at now has a partnership with RCC, my alma mater, where like they do their 4 years of high school and then they continue into RCC. So they want, and it's paid for. So they wind up graduating with a high school degree and a community college and an associate's degree. I think it's a great experience. I loved Purchase. I still keep in contact with a few of my professors even now 10 years later. I can't recommend the colleges that I went to enough. And like I said, I commuted to everywhere, so like I didn't really, I never felt like I got the true college experience because I commuted and I worked, so that was my whole life. But I think I am who I am because of those experiences in a lot of ways.
I think just getting that true hands-on training and work, really benefited, said you especially, Mike.
Yeah, like I purchased like all my friends, classmates, whatever, like they could be partying in dorms and whatever. Like I was working for the school sports department, or like I was on a deadline to do this, or I was working at the local bowling alley. Like I didn't have that fun. So I learned, I'm like, I gotta work. I gotta do what I gotta do because I don't have the luxury of not being able to work. Also, I really like money, even though I've never had a lot of it. But again, I think it's also it's a work ethic that's just in me. But I also think it's also led me to other things. So like getting the student teaching placement I wanted was through the help of an individual who I met through the Haversham Little League and announcing all those games. So it's like, when I'm 12, I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, I might be able to use this as a favor 20 years from now. But like that's just kind of how it went. Like you did the right thing. You volunteered, you give back to your community, and then life finds a way of giving back to you. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, definitely paid your dues and paying it forward as well. How tough was it to leave, again, journalism, to leave that field and, move into another, another arena, another sector? I mean, I had to ask you about that, Mike.
Honestly, it was one of the scariest things in my life because all my life, that's how I was known. Like, heck, my first tattoo says writers have ink in their veins. Like I'm a writer, I'm a reporter. It's how everyone knew me. Oh, you're still at Lowhead? It's been 3 years since I've left there, and people are still like, oh, you're still doing the writing thing. So just to leave it all, or to even think about leaving, was frightening. I just I'm trying to think. I think I just got engaged to Shannon, so I'm like, and that was also a factor. And I'm like, I want to get married. I want to have kids. And, I know what I make at Low HUD. My salary hasn't increased in 10 years. So I have to make a move in that regard. But also I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to leave. I love so much of this job. But it's just one of those things where like, it's the deep end of the pool analogy. Like you need to jump in, or I guess I should say the cold pool analogy. Like you're worried about the pool being cold, just jump in. You'll get used to it, and I'm sure you'll be fine. And so since making that first pivot into bar and restaurant management, and then again, even leaving that to go back to school, terrifying. But I'm like, hey, I moved here and I'm doing okay here. I'm sure I'll be fine there, and that will put me in an even better position for me and my family. So now that's just kind of how I look at it. Like something may be scary, but the scary things are good. That's where you grow.
That's true. That's true. You got to take that leap of faith. Hey, what sports writers did you pay particular, close attention to growing up, Mike? That you really said, okay, those are the guys I am sort of.
I mean, Tyler Kepner was one that like I kind of read throughout college because my art of sports writing teacher was like, oh, you guys have to read Tyler Kepner. Like, he just the way he describes a game, he just writes so beautifully. So like he was one. Honestly, like I just really read the local reporters. I read the journal news. I wasn't the type that read because like when I say like I wanted to go into sports journalism, like I wanted to be on Sports Center. Like I wanted to be Stuart Scott. That's who I wanted to be. And then I got to college and I'm like, I'm not that good on camera. I don't feel as comfortable on camera. Like, but I still want to cover sports. So I guess I'll write. And I know I did the writing thing at the high school paper. So then that's why I kind of shifted my focus from broadcast journalism to like print journalism. Started reading Jeff Pearlman a lot because he's from West or Putnam, which is like another county over. And I've had conversations with him. He wound up actually teaching at SUNY Purchase. So I audited like one of the classes that he took. So I really just read like the local people just to kind of get an idea of what's going on in the area. And then those people eventually wound up becoming my colleagues.
Oh, that's great. It's really awesome to hear. So definitely of course, married. I want to ask you just the support from your family, of course, your wife, Shannon, just, I said what they've meant to you here, and was sports also big in your family as well growing up here, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, sports has always been a part of my life. We played soccer, baseball. I bowled for a number of years. So the sports have just always been around. My mom, was always like either the team mom or she coached or something. My dad has always been a big sports guy. I remember listening to Mike and the Mad Dog and WFAN all the time whenever we were in my dad's car. So that's just always been something. My dad I've always been one of my biggest supporters in the world. If I told my dad, I think I want to study neurosurgery, I'd be like, Mike, I think you're gonna make a great neurosurgeon. Like you're gonna be a phenomenal neurosurgeon. You're gonna save someone's life one day. Like and not even thinking about it. And my mom was the one who's always like, "You make a really good teacher. You'd make a really good teacher. You should really consider going into teaching." So she definitely deserves that push. And Shannon, I mean, she's not here right now, but like where she normally sits. Like she's been my anchor because I always tell people like in a marriage, like think about it. At the time we had been together 3 years and I had gone through 3 career changes, whereas in the previous 10 years that we met, or in the previous 10 years before I met her, like Shannon, like this is all I've done. So I know like to your parents, you could be like, they could be sitting like, this guy is kind of unstable. Like he's making 3 careers, making another, like what if he decides to give up on this teaching thing? So for her to, and I always had a conversation with her about anything. I didn't just do it and be like, hey, we'll figure it out. So for her to be like, hey, I support you through leaving Low HUD and going into bar restaurant management. And then when COVID hit and I'm like, hey, I think I want to go back and get my master's degree and everything. She's like, I think it's a great choice. Because at the time we were working completely opposite schedules. We both hated it. And I'm like, I mean, do we really want to do you're 9 to 5 and then I'm 5 to 3 in the morning? Like, do we really want to do that the rest of our lives? Like, so I'm like, hey, like it's going to be, and I told her like, it's going to be a grind for these next 2-3 years, but I'm hoping that to come out of it in a better position to where we're both working day schedules. We both have solid incomes, whatever. We both have reliable, stable jobs. And if and when we have kids, like we could both be around, whatever, and it'll be better for the both of us. But I need you on board. If she's like, absolutely not, like that would have caused a real divide between us. Because either I won't become a teacher or it's just, and then now it's like, okay, well, now I don't know if I have your support. There's a whole lot of things that could have gone a different way, but thankfully she's always been very supportive and very, very realistic. It's not blind loyalty. She has really good conversations with me about like, well, what about this? Or what if this doesn't work out? So she's been great through everything.
Yeah, that's wonderful news to hear, Mike. Hey, just a couple more left.
Yeah.
Of course, I think you're in a perfect spot to offer that advice, to upcoming, journalists, younger journalists, whether it's high school, college, even people who are now into their entry level, said careers. What would you say to, because again, the whole dynamics have changed with the business we've known over the years. I mean, since, I mean, 2014 I joined. I mean, of course, before that, what would you say to them, as they're trying to navigate, said, I mean, it's become very turbulent, said we've seen the print. So everything is transitioning, of course, over to digital as well, Mike.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I've guest lectured at a couple of journalism classes, and I always told them, and I didn't say it to scare them, and I always try to tell my professors this, but journalism, it can be a very unstable business. I think it is an unstable, like, to me, if this is not something you have to do, if you don't love this profession, if this is just something that you're like, oh, I think I can do journalism, like, unless you love it, get out. Because you're probably not gonna, like, yes, you could become Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith and make millions of dollars, but the odds are you're probably not going to make a ton of money. You're going to have to deal with layoffs of wherever you go. It's going to be very stressful. The hours suck. Like, it's a lot. So unless you love doing it, I would reconsider. That being said, if this is what you want to do, be versatile, be open to feedback, humble yourself and or try to be humble. And like we were just talking about earlier, cultivate relationships, talk to everyone, be everywhere, because my life got so much easier and it led to so many better things by just being around. I used to go to games on my days off just because, like, it's a big game. It's Tappan Zee and Pearl River. And I know this is a local rivalry, but I'm off and I'm like, I need to go to this game. It's a league battle, and like, we're not covering it. But if I can go and I can just tell the coach, like, as long as, even if I don't tell the coach I'm going, like, if I just show up, they see that. They're like, hey, Mike, like, Mike see it. They don't know that it's my day off or whatever. And like, maybe if they ask afterwards, like, hey, no interview, I'm like, I'm on my day off, I'm just here. They see that. And the ones who get it, like Jamie Keefe, they remember them. They're like, this guy, so if he does ask me like that hard question one time, like, I'm not going to break his chops too much because I know he busts his ass on this beat. And again, developing relationships, it just leads to so much easier of a time on the job, especially if you cover high school sports, because these are kids who are not used to getting interviewed. They're not used to you sticking a phone or pad of paper and like, hey, I'm going to ask you some questions now, and I'm going to write down your thoughts, or I'm going to, I'm going to be recording anything you say right now. I've seen some of the most eloquent talkers just freeze up, and they're like, it was good. It was okay. Oh, but then over time, it's like, it goes from, hey, I remember covering you as an 8th grader, and you were like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Even though I know you're at the top of your class, like, I know you can speak, I know you're intelligent. And then by the time you get there, sophomores, juniors, seniors, it's just like, oh, hey, Yvette, I need you for 2 minutes. Whatever. It's like, oh, hey, Mike, what's going on? And then they become more relaxed and they become more comfortable because they know who you are. You're not just some guy sticking a microphone or a phone or something in front of their face. Like, they know who you are. And now I've, in the time since then, like, I've had coaches that I covered who were my groomsmen, who were at our wedding, who I've been to their weddings. Like, so it's, again, it becomes more than just like, you're there to do a job. And even then I could still cover any of them objectively and be like, hey, that coaching decision, or, hey, this, what are your thoughts on that? And if they're pissed off, like, sorry, man, I got to talk to you. And they get it. So, but yeah, that'd probably be my biggest piece of advice, is like, just be everywhere and talk to everyone.
Yeah. You know what I respect about you, Mike, the most is that you were willing to do anything, all the, behind the scenes work, especially when you're there at the Journal News. I was reading up on, said some of your tasks. I mean, the fact that Yeah, you would, handle, as said, the phone calls, the texts, the
Mm-hmm.
emails.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you mentioned, covering games. I mean, and they're working on the features as well. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to leave that out as well, because it's just
No,
not the
no.
game stories. There's those feature articles that again made a significant, as said, impact as well.
There's so much about local journalism. I mean, definitely journalism, but local
Yeah,
journalism
yeah.
that people just don't understand. Like, so whenever they sit there and say, well, how come you're not covering my team as much? Or, you were only at one game this week, or you were only at two games this week. It's like,
Mhm.
you don't think that I would love to be at 7 games a week? Like
Yeah,
double duty. I'm covering a 4 o'clock and then a 7 o'clock every single day. Like,
yeah,
I would love that, but we are tasked with doing these other articles or whatever. Or like, we need to work on these bigger projects because it's another component of journalism. They wanted us doing like one enterprise, one really in-depth, weeks long, months long piece, like per quarter. They wanted us doing one column a week at one time. They wanted us doing an investigative piece like that we were working on. So it's
hmm
like you said, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that a lot of people don't appreciate.
yeah,
And there's a lot of things I can say about the company that owns Lowhud, but I also like the reporters who work there.
yeah,
They're so talented. They put in so much work that goes unseen, unnoticed, unrespected. That I really just implore people to, like, before you just fire off your angry Facebook comment or your angry tweet, like, just know there's more to the story, and that they're working their tails off, even if to you it may look like, oh, they just didn't want to come.
yeah.
So yeah.
Hey, I didn't want to leave out Nancy Haggerty. You said I mentioned Nancy before he came on the air. Can you talk about I mean, just in terms of what she brought to the table? I mean, she was just phenomenal. I said, working, and I got to know Nancy, of course, with her, covering the Rockland Bolters as well when they were playing in the Can-Am League here, Mike.
I I say this all the time. I love Nancy Haggerty. Again, she
Mm,
was at our wedding. Like,
yeah,
there is there are not enough good words in the English lexicon to describe how good of a person Nancy Haggerty is, how
yeah,
talented of a reporter and a writer she is, and how hard of a worker she is. The amount of
yeah,
times she has been in that office until 11, 12, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever. Like, she's there to all hours. And she's like, oh, I was here until like, 2, 3 in the morning. I'm like, doing what? She's like, oh, well, I was researching, I was doing this, whatever. Just,
yeah.
she's always working. And like, I never thought she ever got the appreciation she deserved at Lowhud.
hmm
I think some people who are in her coverage area, they see her hard work and they respect her, especially the track community, the track and
hmm
field community.
hmm
But she is what journalism really should be. Like, just someone who wants to get it right, someone who really cares passionately about what they do, and someone who's just talented at what they do as well. It's not just
Yeah.
someone who just relies on talent. Like, she works at her craft, and she's also just an amazing human being. So like, when I say, like, I root for people in this world, like, I do, I root for everyone.
Yeah.
But like, Nancy is someone who deserves all of the good things in this world and then some.
Yeah, well said. I think again, and one thing is, Nancy, I think I saw her write down everything on a pad. I don't think I
Yeah,
ever saw her
with
using a
a
tape
phone.
recorder. It was all on pad, and
And
that's what again, I respected her, so much about that.
And
Yeah,
I'm like, Nancy, if nothing else, like, you can, and that's what I started kind of copying her a little bit. Like, I
yeah,
would hit the record button on my phone, so I make sure I'm getting everything you're saying. But then,
yeah,
like, at the same time, I'll like make a little bookmark. So like, okay, at the 30-second mark, that's when he
yeah,
talks about the position change or whatever. Or at
mm,
45 seconds is when he talks about that timeout. So
yeah,
it also helps you when you're doing a feature or when you're doing an article. Like, if I have a 13-minute interview with you, I'm not sitting there listening to the whole 13-minute
I
interview.
know.
Like, oh,
Yeah,
hey, I
yeah,
needed to he had a really great quote about his daughter. Like, oh, it's at the 6-minute mark. Boom, go to the 6-minute mark. But yeah, I'm
yeah.
like, Nancy, you have all these papers. Like, we live in a digital world. Like, use it to your advantage. Get
Yeah,
on Twitter, like, get on all this
yeah,
stuff and like make it work for you.
yeah,
But again, that's Nancy. Like, she's an old school
yeah.
reporter in a lot of
That's
ways.
I was about to say that. Yeah, it's old school
Um,
versus new school. So, but she was
yeah,
definitely old school. So, yeah.
and still talented. Like I said, she's still got the quotes right, and she's still got all the information. So
Yeah.
Nancy is definitely a rare breed of journalism and journalist and human being. So like I said,
Yeah.
can't say enough good things about her.
I know you still got it in your veins, to do it. Is there like, come to where you want, man, I just want another shot. I want to go back and, do it. Or is it just that is now
People
basically left the bus stop or left the, as they say, or left the station.
people ask me all the time, like, oh, do you miss it? Or what do you miss
Yeah.
most or whatever? I'm
Yeah.
like, I honestly do miss the games, and I miss
Yeah.
the kids and the coaches or whatever. Like, I mean, obviously all the BS that you have to do behind the scenes, like, is not fun. And like you said, the phone never stops going off. So
Yeah.
that's probably the best thing I love about not being in journalism anymore,
Yeah.
is the, like,
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about my phone pinging every other
Yeah.
every other minute.
Yeah.
But no, I like, they've contacted me every now and then, like, hey, we got a tournament, you want to freelance? And I've said, like, listen, I'm down. If I'm available, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But if I'm not available, I can't do it. But
That's
I
true.
every now and then I'll get the itch to, like, I kind of hope that they would call me for like this tournament or something like that. Or if they
Yeah.
need a freelancer for something, like, hey, we have like 5 really big games going on, and we only have 3 reporters. Like, can you get out to this game? Like, sure. Like, because to me, it wouldn't be about the money, the $50 or $100 they would throw.
Yeah.
I don't even know how
Yeah.
much a freelancer makes. It was 50 when I started in college,
Yeah.
15 years ago, whatever. But no, it was really just kind of to be like, just to get back out there and just to, see, like, do I still got it? Like, would I even remember what to do? Like, how do I write a lead again or whatever? Like, how do I work in this quote?
Yeah.
But it's good because I feel like I still do get that taste at school, like being a teaching assistant. Like, they have me, even though I'm social studies certified, they have me in the humanities wing. So I do work with the English classes. So like, I will implement like journalism, tactics and principles of, like, if they're writing a story, like, with a hook or a lead, I'm like, you want to grab me, or like, you want to use this quote here and you want to lead it into here. So like, I am still, I guess, staying fresh in that regard. But yeah, every once in a while I'm like, it would be nice. Or like, I wonder, like, if I really just pursued it, if I, like, what would life have been like if I'm like, I want to be a New York Yankees beat writer. That's all I want to do. I'm going to, I'm not going to stop until I get it, even if I have to move and bounce around. But then I always go back to, I'm like, then I wouldn't have met Shannon. I wouldn't be where I am now. And that ends that conversation really quickly.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. No, I think, the meat and potatoes of combining the quotes and with the story of a game is just, again, I that's what makes it click. That's what makes it flow. Without the quotes, you're toast. I mean, it's really it's insipid as far as I'm concerned.
I always try to tell people, like, or I always looked at approaching game stories like, to me, you're storytelling. You can get AI to just say, okay, this person scored this many points, this person did this, and here's just the crux of the game, whatever. But like, I love getting like the nuances or like the, the look that, Dorothy gave the coach or whatever, like, in that timeout, whatever, like, you could tell, like, oh, she's about to go off right now. And then she scores. Like, someone can just say, oh yeah, and so-and-so scored 10 points in the fourth quarter. But like, you don't know that it was right after that timeout. So now I can ask, like, hey, what did coach say in that timeout, or what was going through your mind? And they get some crazy quote, like, like, I was in kill mode at that, like, oh my God, that's a phenomenal quote. Like, to me, like, that's so much better than just getting a quote of like, like all these canned quotes that I know you've heard a million times, and all these other reporters, they're a great team, and we don't take anything for granted, and we tried really hard. We've been practicing, and like, no, I want, like, I want those quotes with teeth to them.
That's right.
And that only comes from, like you said, watching the game and really trying to understand everything
intensely. You're really not getting off track. I think that's what a lot of reporters do, is that they're, of course, when you have your phone, sitting right next to you, and I've seen it even when I was in the press box last week at TD Bank Ballpark, and I'm like, are you guys watching the game? And I am, I may be shooting video, but I'm actually paying attention to what's going on the field. And, that's I think is, again, what makes it, again, worth the time. I mean, then you're wasting your point here, just in terms of being in the press box.
And especially in baseball or softball, where like the players are all spread out. It's not like basketball where it's like, hey, everyone's kind of contained in the same area, whatever. And even then, like, you have the benches are all right there. Like, you have the dugouts on the side, whatever. Then you have the outfielders all the way out there and the catcher all the way down here. Like, you may not see so-and-so getting into an argument or getting heated in the dugout while the team is in the field or something like that. But if you're paying attention to the game and you're like, oh, I wonder what Justin said to Matthew that they really got into it or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it could be they may find out no, that's just, they're brothers. They love each other, whatever. That was just passion. Or it could be we're going to keep that in house. We're going to find out. And now it's okay, well, now I got to watch that storyline between Justin and Matthew, because if the team starts going on a downturn, since that fight, what's the team chemistry like? What's the locker room like?
That's right. What's the vibe?
Or vice versa, or if they start taking off, hey, maybe that really sparked something in them. Because maybe one of them gave a passionate speech after the game. You never. It's all the things you want to be watching.
And before you get the last word, Mike, this has just been absolutely tremendous. The fact that you could be so relatable. Being a teaching assistant, the fact that a lot of these kids are student athletes, so I'm sure that you can have those conversations as well, and be able to, if anybody does, approach you, you're right there to offer that, that advice, and just, it's something you can have in common as well.
So for my it's not, I don't see it too much in my school.
Okay.
But when I student taught, it was at my old high school, and some of them were athletes that I wrote a little bit about, or, when they found I wrote for the Journal News, they were like, oh, so do you know so-and-so? I'm like, yes, I worked very closely with them. They're like, I hate him. I'm like, why? And he always, again, he always picks against us. He doesn't believe in us. I'm like, coming from someone who knows him personally, when you don't, you see him once, twice a year, or whatever. I guarantee you, and I'm saying this with love, he does not care about the volleyball team. He's not losing sleep over a night, or at night, whether or not you hate him or not. He's trying to do the job the best he can. And he's doing so much work that you don't see. So it's to them, it's trying to show them we don't hate any. I always told people, if I pick against your team, it's a prediction. I don't hate you. I don't have a voodoo doll that I'm sticking the pins oh, Harrison Huskies, or my dartboard Harrison. But no, I've also just like I said, just trying to tell them there's more to the story or whatever. And also when they talk to reporters, hey, be relaxed. They're not going to ask you, about Watergate or anything like that. They're going to ask you about the game that you just played in, or they're going to ask you questions about you, which you should be able to answer. And usually if they're interviewing you, it's because you did something good in the game. So there's nothing to be afraid about. And if you are, whatever, talk to your coach, whatever, or talk to me, not for nothing. I think all schools should at the very least offer some kind of media training class or something that,
that's
for the athletes.
Outstanding point you make.
For whether it's talking to the media or learning things that I think they're a lot better nowadays than they were 10 years ago about what they are posting on social media. Cause I've read a few articles about things that they probably shouldn't have tweeted or posted or whatever, but just to get them comfortable of how to talk to the media, things that you should say, things you shouldn't say, how to handle certain situations. Hey, if he starts really digging in on some deep stuff, how do you pivot out of that conversation? And things like that are great. I personally hate being interviewed because I'm just, I don't know. I never know what to say. And I feel like I'm always talking too much, but, that's why. And then, so it's ironic that I'm don't be nervous. It's fine. Whereas now I'm talking too much. I don't know what to say. I don't know what I'm
going to just started this up 3 years ago, Mike. COVID, pandemic, during the pandemic, that's what it is. We started up with these Zoom interviews, and then all of a sudden it took off from there. And then, but for me, it keeps on being an evolving process. The fact that I'm still get those butterflies, get those jitters, but I say to myself, look, it's better to put myself out there and see how the audience reacts. So far, it's been, overwhelmingly positive. So I said, okay, great. You know what? I'll keep that, that flow going. Hey, Mike, I wanted to give you the last word here, man, for, I'm sure family, friends, past employers, colleagues, man, I wanted to give you the floor because you well deserved. You are the GOAT, and I really want, it was an incredible honor and privilege being able to share the press box with you, covering the Rockland Boulders back in 2014 and 15.
Yeah. First of all, I thank you to you, and I appreciate you for having me on. This is your platform, your show. So I appreciate you extending it to me. I guess just to anyone out there who's thinking that they're too old to make a change, you're not. If you're too scared to make the change, the rewards will be worth it. And if the road scares you, whatever, it will most likely make you better in the end, because if you if you lean into it and you take it for all it's worth, I think you can learn a lot of valuable lessons and gain a lot of incredible experiences. So just, if you're not at a place in your life that where you feel completely happy and you think something different can make you happier, then I think it's worth pursuing, because a lot of times I think your gut and your heart kind of knows what you want more than your head does. So if there's something out there that you want to pursue, whether it's teaching or a different profession, just go for it.
Sounds
And be a
good,
good
man.
person. Be a good person.
Yeah, that's it,
That's
man.
all.
You know,
I can't stress
make
that
someone
enough.
else's day, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Spread kindness, pay it forward, all of that. Like
Yep.
it's cliche, it's whatever,
Yeah.
but like just the smallest compliment to someone, holding a door open for someone, paying for
Yeah.
someone's coffee, anything just can really make a huge difference. It can really have that butterfly effect in a positive way.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, Mike, again, just really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you again for the opportunity. Again, wishing you continued success again in teaching, and I'm sure you said you're gonna be doing some incredible things here, you know, in the next couple of years here.
I appreciate you, Sunil. Thank you. It's great catching up with you. And I appreciate you for having me on, man. I know you didn't have to do that, but I'm eternally thankful.
Thank you.